Thanks, Jess. Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and what a awesome spectacle it's been here, and it's fantastic. We're back at LambEx. It's been some time since we've had one of these, and thanks to the organising committee for inviting me here to present to you this afternoon. So I do get the great topic of talking about meat, and that is the fantastic part of our industry. So I've been given a fair list of topics. So we're going to talk about the current state of play for carcasses in our industry, and we'll have a look at some genetic trends of doing that, and then what's going to enable us to move forward in the near future around the development of the MSA model. I'll give you my snapshot of what's the size of the prize and where might this take us as an industry, and then we'll get to some things to take home for you guys of how to get it done in the field. This is what happens to our lamb at present. They all get killed, they all get put in a box together in some yummy brand box. Because I hear it all the time, all lamb is good. And it is. They're dead right. But when we look at data from the resource flock, and you can see here on the x-axis is the hot standard carcass weight and then the eating quality score. So this is genuine consumer scores from humans just like you and I assessing this meat. And you can see there at any given carcass weight, there's a 45-point difference between the best one and the worst one. Now I ask you the question, should they all be in the box together? Carcass weight is a shithouse proxy for eating quality. I was more polite up there. Not only that, as we selected, and this is resource flock data as well, and loins, between 2009 and 2017, across the range of IMF, you can see we had a 6-point drop in the quality of the lambs that we produce from industry size in this country between those 2 days. With no price signal for eating quality, our chops were getting tougher, and this is why. We've done an awesome job as an industry in increasing lean meat yield, and you can give yourselves a real pat on the back for that. However, at the same time, our lambs, as I just showed you, are getting tougher. That shear force 5 going up by about 3.5 newtons or half a kilo over that same time span. Marbling or intramuscular fat over that same period is also going down. We were heading towards making lamb like the Kiwis do. Luckily, the geneticists put some eating quality in some of the indexes about there and stemmed the flow on shear force and stopped the decline in IMF. Stemmed the flow, it plateaued it out. Luckily, 2019, we put eating quality into all selection indexes. And look what happened then. We're drawing these lines back towards where we were when we started measuring genetics in the baseline. But, ladies and gentlemen, we seriously needed to and still need to arrest that decline in IMF and decline in tenderness in our lambs in Australia. So we'll get back to this. All lamb is good, but what I would add to that is some's bloody amazing. The way we're going to help and pull those ones out is through the Meat Standards Australia model, and we've got an awesome blueprint. It's called beef that we can follow on from, and we're so lucky to have had that experience in beef in this country, and we're leading the world in that, and we soon will be hopefully in sheep meat as well. This is a small benchmarking study by the MSA team at one of the abattoirs. And you can see, even with the MSA model, that we've got quite a range in eating quality. This is over a couple of week period where they were there looking at that data. So you can see there's some awesome ones, up around 75 points. And this is just one cut, mind you, just the loin at 5 days of aging, all the way down to 55 points. We live on this awesome island called Australia, and we have to ship a lot of our meat to other countries, and we export about, 70%. So we get free aging. So if we put a bit of aging on that loin, look at that. That whole distribution moves to the right. We get better with aging. That's what happens when we get proteolysis and tenderization of muscle fibers during that post-mortem period. So if we wanted to say on the loin, let's make a 4-star brand out of that, that's where it is. So we get a good percentage at 5 days, but if we age it out, we get a whole heap of 4-star loin out of that one supply chain. And that is not an individual. It's pretty common across what we've seen in that benchmarking studies from MSA. So the opportunity is that we do this with lamb. We've still got our yummy brand, which has probably got all the gold in it, but we've taken the platinum out. We're selling that in the premium brand. And I should use gold, silver and bronze, seeing it's Olympic week. We've got our gold brand, our silver brand in the bottom, and then our economy range in our bronze. And it's just giving consumers more consistency at whatever level they want to pay at. And it's a real aim of mine and a life goal to trade sheep on quality, not on dentition. Anyone in the audience join me on that quest? Yeah, good. We need to get rid of dentition. That tells us nothing. Anyway, we let consumers set the standard, right? They mark our homework. So we've done about over 450,000 consumer tests right now. And each of those consumers tell us for a piece of meat the tenderness, juiciness, liking of flavour and overall liking for that piece of meat. We use that data then to look at how all the traits from the lamb that we've also measured relate to that consumer outcome. And we build a model out of that to predict these cut-by-cook cook methods. And just like the Bureau of Meteorology, every day in our weather systems, we're generating more data. When we generate more data from consumers, we put that data in, and then we can improve the prediction accuracy of the MSA model as well. So that's a continual journey that we're on. And consumers grade our homework. Why? Because they're the only ones that put any money into our supply chain. So they have to be happy with the work we produce. So at this point in time, the MSA model looks like this. So we've got inputs from the carcass in terms of carcass weight, lean meat yield, intramuscular fat, also electrical stimulation to avoid cold shortening, etc. And then aging and packaging type. And our outputs at this point in time are 5 muscles for grill method and a couple of muscles for roast, and then we get these different qualities. It's only for lamb at present. We can only do this in the last couple of years because of these enablers. We could not roll out the MSA cut-based model prior to having the ability to measure IMF in lamb. Now that has been some challenge in the ArmTech project. We spent 5 or 6 good years working on that. So the Soma device there out of Japan has been accredited for that range, and the MEQ probe, which can be done hot and at line speed, is accredited for that range there. We've got another couple of really promising technologies as well, still more in the calibration and validation phase. So mini probes with their optical coherence tomography device, and also InMR out of New Zealand with their nuclear magnetic resonance device. These two are both looking pretty promising for measuring marbling in lamb as well. So we've got some good prospects going forward. Let's now have a look at some eating quality between lamb and hoggets. This is grilled data, aged for 7 days. And that's what it looks like. So the hoggets are in red and the lambs are in blue for the next few slides. And you can see there that we get really high scores for the backstrap, which is on the far left, the knuckle, which is the next one over, or the round. Some of you have never maybe even had a grilled knuckle. And of course the rack, we know that. We've been eating beautiful lamb cutlets all day. But the beauty of lamb is, and something to rejoice that we don't get in beef, is a lamb's got 4 loins. You're like, yeah, of course. No, it's only got 2, 1 on each side. The knuckle and the rump out of lambs eat just as good as the loin. Now that's something to be celebrated. We certainly don't get that in beef. So it's really good. What we can see here is that hoggets either grill the same, slightly better in the loin, not so much in the hindquarter cuts. They're a couple of points behind, but there's not much difference between the lambs and the hoggets and when we grill them. If we roast them, what we're seeing is, it's a classic lamb roast, but roast don't actually score as high with consumers as what grilled lamb does. So have we been doing it wrong all this time? Nah, how good's a Sunday roast? But maybe next time cut it into steaks and grill it. You might enjoy it more. So lamb roasts actually outperform the hoggets in that data set. And another thing, which will be in addition to the next model, is another couple of cooking methods. So slow cook and stir fry. I don't have time to show stir fry today, but slow cook, you can see here, we've got a whole heap of 4 and 5 star slow cooks out of lamb. Now, we've known for a long time that shanks are pretty good. And there's a great one, the heel muscle, which Coles call their shank meat on the retail shelf. It's awesome as well there. In terms of hoggets are even better when you slow cook them than lambs. Slightly worse for the hindquarter cuts. What about new season and old season lamb? A buyer ever been out to your place and said, these are old ones. That's 5 cents down on price. Anyone? Yep. That's the data. So these new season, old season lambs are 240 days old for the new season, 328 days for the old season. There was a difference of 2.7 points in the knuckle and 2.6 points in the rump, and no difference across the other cuts, grilled or roasted. I'll leave that there. Australian beef brands. Let's have a quick look at what the rest of those guys are doing. It's just a big sheet, really. There's a whole heap of brands, 196 brands now that are differentiating on quality in the beef industry. And 20 of them are even communicating MSA into international markets via EQG, or Eating Quality Guaranteed cipher, moving away from a dentition cipher. I think that's an awesome step forward there. Let's have a look right here on our shelves in beef at Coles, and a great supporter of this program. They've got 3 levels of the same cut on the shelf. They've got their Drover's Choice, $24 a kilo. Their Coles Butcher, $40 a kilo. Still porterhouse steak, I haven't changed the cut. And their Coles Finest on the shelf just next door, $51.35 a kilo. Now that there is segregation of carcasses and marketing to you in Australia today. Where are we in lamb? We've got some awesome leaders, and I'm so disappointed Will couldn't be here. He is leading this industry, and as Streety said this morning, that it takes a fair bit of courage to lead, and Will is one of those inspirational and aspirational people in this industry taking us forward, and they do a great job of segregating their lambs and have got the GLQ5 brand, of course. Out of that same stable, Coles have joined them on that journey. We've got Coles cutlets coming out of there, and Coles Finest, which today on the shelf have a difference of $4 a kilo right there. So you can get differentiated product in retail today. The other company that's doing a bit is LambPro. They have their Willow Bend brand and also the Kinross Station brand. So segregation based on quality right there. But there's only 2 processing plants in the whole of Australia segregating on quality. There's a whole heap of other things we segregate on, but 2 on quality. That is a whole heap of opportunity right there, ladies and gentlemen. We are never going to win the battle on price, nor do we probably want to. So we need to deliver something in the mind of the consumer beyond just price. And as the great Warren Buffett said, price is what you pay and value is what you get. He obviously didn't see that in Apple any longer after last week's great sell-off. So where do we get value in lamb? It's enjoyable. We all love it. That's why we're here. But so do our customers. We've heard that multiple times today. It's delicious. It's versatile. I'll show you a bit of data on that. It's quick to prepare. 15 mil steak, a couple of minutes in the pan, done. And why that's important is when you pick your kids up from daycare, we're both, modern families, a lot of double income families these days. When you pick them up from daycare, you've got about 30 minutes to get them home and get them fed before they turn into gremlins. Now that's something that's quick to prepare and they eat it. That is value in the eyes of some of our population that have got young kids, especially the urban population. It's flavoursome, of course it is, and it's consistent. We need that one as well to come with us. This is a bit of data from MLA showing the versatility of where our Australian lamb gets used in food service in America. And you can see there the 4-year growth in some of those categories or cook methods. I'd challenge you to know how to say some of them, let alone know how to cook them. that we're seeing in the US. So what is the size of the prize? We heard from Brett this morning that lamb into the US is climbing. And look at that as an awesome graph of demand of your lamb from Australia into the US market. That is a good linear incline. What does it mean? This graph here shows us the percentage of our lamb that we export to all these different countries that ends up in food service. So let's start with the US. That is a $1.3 billion industry of Australian lamb, of which 55% of that ends up in food service. What about the Middle East? In Saudi Arabia and the UAE, 70% of Australian lamb ends up in food service. What about in China? 92% of Australian lamb ends up in food service. We are a high cost of production country, and they recognise that they need to feed their customers in food service their best lamb they can buy. That's our lamb. What about in Korea? $219 million market, 65% into food service. Japan, similar. Australia, we spend $2.6 billion domestically on lamb. 12% of that, or $312 million worth, ends up in food service. Let's jump to that for a second. 2019, pre-COVID, 25% of Australian lamb consumed in Australia was consumed at the food service level. Today, that's 12%. We're losing ground in food service in this country, and maybe it's because when you go and have a steak, it's a superior steak to what you cook at home. Maybe they don't get that from lamb. That's just my musings. That's not MLA's take on this. But there has to be some reason other than food supply, etc., why we're losing ground on food service in Australia. So what do we need to do to progress MSA sheep meat? We need carcass identification. We cannot have a system that allocates a number for marbling or lean meat yield that just goes off into the ether and is not attached to a carcass. This is our Achilles heel. But we need to do this as well. Get data back to you guys, the producers, that allows us to select which ewe to cull because they had a terrible lamb, or which one to keep, and then we can line it up with Ferg's technology to work out which lamb came from which ewe, and the whole industry hums. Data back to producers is the black hole of the Australian sheep industry. It's nowhere. You get two-dimensional data on carcass weight. Whoop-de-doo. We need to rethink some strongly held views around hoggets, around new season, old season, around different cuts and how we should cook them. We've got a whole rethink about how we should do this. And everything from 4 tooth up goes in the mutton box. I think we need some categories for 4 and 6 teeth animals as well, so we can drive a bit more value out of them, because they're not that old in terms of age, or even better. I can't believe I just said the dentition word. Even better, we need to spend money as an industry on developing a technology that helps us measure tenderness on the carcass at line speed. Now that's some quest. That's not going to happen without lots of investment and a fair bit of time and good interdisciplinary teams. That's about the meat. What can you guys do on farm and breeding profitable sheep? Now, I'm not going to give you a sermon about this. I've got no idea. But they've got to be fit for your farm and suitable for your market. And those of you who have done a bred well, fed well, have seen these slides before. And I'm going to focus in on this one because I've got no idea about the top one. But if we think about it, when you're selecting merinos, you've got a whole heap of stuff to worry about. That fluffy stuff on the outside that gets in the way of a good chop. How much they reproduce, how many twins you get. The internal and external parasites of these things, the structure and type, we like to look at them and how they walk and all that sort of stuff. Make sure they get around and they don't break down. How fast they grow. And then, if you've got any selection intensity left at all, you can think about the carcass. Whew. Merino producers, take your hats off to you. You guys are legends. If you can get good carcasses out of merinos, you've done all that other stuff perfectly as well. What about maternals? There's less. We don't have to worry about the wool and terminals. You've got heaps of selection pressures. Get into it. What is the value of a carcass? It's the quantity of saleable meat times by the quality of that meat. It's that simple. One times the other. It's like any good market. We don't get paid on the value of a carcass at this point in time. We get paid on kilos. We don't get any signals about this at all. IMF is a big lever, and the biggest one we can pull in terms of genetics to do it. So what drives IMF, and thanks Lampro and Tom and the team for that beautiful photo there, but it's all about genetics and also nutrition and management. You have to have the two together. You can't take one without the other one. You'll end up with a train wreck still. The two of those things together will give you animals like that. So can we select for subcutaneous fat or C fat and get more IMF? Short answer is no. There's a 0.09 correlation between fat on the outside or C fat and IMF. So if you want IMF, select for it directly. These ones up here, a whole heap of fat on the outside and no marbling on the inside. We don't want them. Yeah? What about, can we select for yield and quality? So there's two things that are antagonistic. Here's the graph for the terminals of 2,000 lambs that have been through the resource flock. You can see there that we can find some in that top right-hand quadrant. There is a strong negative correlation. That top right-hand quadrant is high yield, high quality. They do exist. There's few of them. Now, these have all been measured. How we've found those curve benders, we've measured them through the resource flock. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I don't know if you know, but not $1 of your levy fees will go into supporting resource flock from 2026 onwards. That's how we've found these animals and have moved our industry forward. These ones down here, low IMF and low meat yield, we don't want them in terms of carcasses. They're taking us backward. What about IMF and not have any? Can we just select for IMF and not worry about shear force? Not really. There is a strong positive correlation between the two. So if we take one up, which is IMF on the x-axis, that shear force comes right down. So it's pretty good. But all of those ones in that top half, that's my summation of it. We need to shift that shear force curve pretty quickly and get our meat more tender. It's a different mechanism to IMF. We can get tough lambs with high IMF, and we certainly don't want them. So that brings me to my conclusions. Demand for superior eating quality lamb across the world, in my take, is pretty significant. Genetics and nutrition are really equally important for increasing our IMF. Low shear force is necessary as well. We can't just pull one lever and expect the other one to come with it. You've got to select on that SF5 or shear force, because we can get some tough lambs, and typically they're really high growth lambs, and they're taking our industry in the wrong direction. Not about the growth, about the toughness. So make sure you use all the tools available to you. Segregation of brands and quality is paramount for our industry to increase the dollars that are coming in from the consumer. And feedback to you guys is of paramount importance so you can select the right animals for the next generation. Thank you so much for your attention today.